Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, Lioness for Truth, where one video at a time I bring forth hidden historical documents and ancient artifacts to restore the stolen yet rich history of the not-so-African African-American. Now, Joan of Arc is yet another prominent historical figure that the Caucasians, of course, claim was white. Do they present any evidence to prove that statement? Of course not. Because according to their white supremacist mentality, everyone that ever did anything positive or significant must have been white. And assuming or even proposing anything different makes you a blackwashing lunatic. But let's get into some actual historical evidence and proof today that will display how while the Caucasians can't actually prove that Joan of Arc was white, I can prove to you that she was black. Because yes, ladies and gentlemen, Joan of Arc was indeed a black woman. That is a well historically documented fact that has been strategically kept out of the public fool system that wants black people to think that our only history includes Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, and Harriet Tubman. But anyway, let's get into these sources. Now, for those that have never heard of Joan of Arc, I'm going to go ahead and give a little context as to who we're going to be talking about today. Saint Joan of Arc was born in 1412 in France. She was a national heroine of France, a peasant girl, who, believing that she was acting under divine guidance, led the French army in a momentous victory at Orléans that repulsed an English attempt to conquer France during the Hundred Years' War. Captured a year afterwards, Joan was burned to death by the English and their French collaborators as a heretic. She became the greatest national heroine of her compatriots, and her achievement was a decisive factor in the later awakening of French national consciousness. So Saint Joan of Arc was a young French woman that, like it said, led the French army in a momentous victory against the English, and later was burned at the stake. And they made her a saint, so now she goes by Saint Joan of Arc. And she was born in 1412 in France. So that's who we're talking about. Of course, the Caucasians say she was white. We're just supposed to assume that she was white because, anyone that wasn't a slave in history, they want you to just assume they were white. And anyone that was a slave, they want you to assume they were black. But anyway, that's who Saint Joan of Arc is. I come back to this letter a lot. It's a letter written by Benjamin Franklin in 1755 called Observations Concerning the Increase of Mankind. And in this letter, Benjamin Franklin goes into detail about how the people of Europe are black people, that Europe is a black continent occupied by black people, and all those nations are black nations now that we would consider white nations. But in reality, Europe has only been a so-called white continent for about 100, 150 years. Benjamin Franklin wrote this letter in 1755, and let's see how he talks about the French, not only the rest of the Europeans, because we are the actual Europeans. The people occupying Europe today are Caucasians from the Caucasus Mountains. They're not European. They're indigenous to the Caucasus Mountains. But let's see how Benjamin Franklin describes the French in this letter, because remember, Joan of Arc was born in 1412 in France. She was a French woman. Benjamin Franklin says this, which leads me to add one remark, that the number of purely white people in the world is proportionably very small. So peep that. It said that there's not a lot of white people in the world, but now through their media and through their manipulation using the media, they want you to think that they're the majority, when Benjamin Franklin just said it's not a lot of white people in the world, obviously. All Africa is black or tawny, Asia chiefly tawny, America exclusive of the newcomers wholly so. And in Europe, we're talking about Europe now, the Spaniards, Italians, French, Russians, and Swedes are generally of what we call a swarthy complexion, as are the Germans also. Benjamin Franklin just said that the Spaniards, Italians, French, Russians, and Swedes, as well as the Germans, are of a swarthy complexion. Let's focus on the French. He just said the French are of a swarthy complexion. Let's get the definition of swarthy. Here we're in English Dictionary from 1828, and we're going to get the definition of swarthy. Swarthy, dark of complexion, black, dusky, or tawny. So to be swarthy means you have a dark complexion. You have dark melanated, darkly brown skin. To be swarthy doesn't mean you're pale or fair or Caucasian looking. It means you have dark skin, darkly brown skin, that you have a dark complexion, that you are black, dusky, or tawny. So Benjamin Franklin is saying that all these European nations, including the French, have dark brown, swarthy black complexions. They have dark skin. You can even see at the top of the screen here, swarth means black or darkly brown. So that's pretty straightforward. The French, the Russians, the Swedes, the Spaniards, the Italians, they're all darkly brown-skinned people. And Benjamin Franklin just said that the French are darkly brown, black complexion people. So now we're in this book. We're getting into the sources describing Joan of Arc as she lived, as she walked when she was alive. This book is called Saint Joan of Arc. It was written in 1936 by V. Sackville West. So let's get into this book and see how Joan of Arc was actually described. Because if you notice, all these historical figures that the Caucasians want us to think were white, they never present any actual proof to prove that they were white. They just say it and prompt people to assume that they were white. But if you really start paying attention, all they do is stand at the front of a class or stand in front of a camera and talk about a person that they never saw, a time that they were never alive in, an event that they never witnessed, and they never present any proof to prove that these people that they say were white were white. You will never see a Caucasian pull out old books and maps and artifacts to prove what they're saying, because what they're teaching is nothing more than a white fantasy and a fictional version of history that never actually took place. That's why you'll never see them actually dive into books like I'm doing to prove what they're saying. Because when you get into proof, while they say everybody was white, when you actually get into facts and proof and evidence, everybody was black. So that's why you'll never see them actually get into sources. They'll just stand in front of a class and talk out of their mouth. But think about it. If you were to go to court in modern day, if you were to go to court with just a story and no facts, no proof, no evidence, no receipts, no nothing, how would the judge react to what you have to say? Would the judge just take your word for it? Or would the judge ask you for some proof? It's time for us to start asking these people for some proof, because if they pull out proof, none of these people that they say were white were white. But anyway, let's get into this book. So the book is called St. Joan of Arc, and it was released in 1936. Here we're in this book, and we're on page 4, talking about Joan of Arc now. Those who describe her from either first or secondhand knowledge give on the whole a consistent picture. Her hair, they say, was short and black. Her complexion dark and sunburned, as might be expected. The author of the first part of King Henry VI makes her refer to herself as black and swart. We see that word swart again. Remember, I was just talking about what swarthy means, or swarth. This is the same word. So it says that King Henry VI makes her refer to herself as black and swart. Black and swart. That she is black and swarthy. She is black and darkly brown. She is of a dark brown complexion. She has dark skin. Let's read it again. Her hair, they say, was short and black. Her complexion dark and sunburned, as might be expected. The author of the first part of King Henry VI makes her refer to herself as black and swart. In just this short few sentences, we have her described as being dark-skinned or dark of complexion 3 separate times. Now, let me ask you, what about the images that they show you that are supposed to be depicting Joan of Arc look black, swarthy, darkly brown, or dark? Is there anything black, brown, darkly brown, dark about any of those pictures at all? Do you see any amount of melanin, any amount of blackness, any amount of darkly brown skin anywhere? She's black and swarthy. She's black and darkly brown, dark of complexion. And another point about this passage is it says her hair was short and black. Did you know that it is genetically impossible for a Caucasian to have natural black hair? If you get into the genetics of it, if you get into the biology of it, it is impossible for a Caucasian to have black hair. It is actually impossible. Because in order for your cells to have enough melanin to produce black hair, those same cells also at the same time produce dark brown skin. So you can't have pale white pink skin and also have black hair. It's one or the other. If your cells have enough melanin to make your hair black, your skin is going to be more brown. So you can't be pale and have black hair. That is a genetic biological fact. So it says her hair was short and black. Automatically, there you go, she couldn't have been Caucasian. Because for your cells to be lacking melanin enough to make you pale and pink colored, your cells can at the same time have enough melanin in them to make your hair dark. That's why you see dark-haired Caucasians are more tan than, say, a blonde or a ginger Caucasian. So if her hair was black, automatically, scientifically speaking, because we're dealing with facts here on this channel, she could not have been Caucasian if her hair was black. And it says her complexion was dark and sunburned, as might be expected. And King Henry VI makes her refer to herself as black and swart. What does swart mean? To be darkly brown. And actually, I want to pull one more definition, because another lie that the Caucasian is going to tell you is that complexion is referring to hair color. But let's prove them wrong real quick. Complexion means the color of the skin, particularly of the face, the color of the external parts of the body or thing, as a fair complexion, a dark complexion, or the complexion of the sky. So hair isn't even mentioned here. Hair isn't even mentioned. Complexion means the color of your skin, particularly of the face, the color of the external parts of the body or thing. Complexion has nothing to do with hair. So when you're reading these old documents and it's saying that all these people that they say were white had dark, brown, swarthy, tawny, black complexions, that's talking about their skin. They want you to think it's talking about their hair. It's not. Once again, these people think that they can just bend the English language to their benefit. But dealing with facts, once again, complexion means the color of your skin. It's not talking about your hair. So when it says she had a swarthy, dark brown, black complexion, it's talking about her skin, not her hair. Now here we're in another book. We got another source here. This book is called Joan of Arc by Grace James, and it was released in 1910. Here we are on page 108. Another primary source describing Joan of Arc, Saint Joan of Arc, as a black woman. She appeared to be about 25 years of age, was strong and of a brown complexion. What does complexion mean? The color of her skin. She appeared to be about 25 years of age, was strong and of a brown complexion. She's of a brown face. She's of brown skin, tall and in a man's dress, as had been the real Joan of Arc. So she's 25 years old, strong and of a brown complexion, tall and in a man's dress, as had been the real Joan of Arc. Once again, think back to all those fake images they show you that's supposed to be Joan of Arc. Is there anything brown about that woman? Is her face brown? Is her skin brown? Is anything about her brown? Do you see any amount of brownness anywhere? And I often think of this analogy. If there's, say, a wanted poster that describes someone that robbed the bank as being a 6-foot black man, and they arrest a 6-foot white man, what conclusion do you come to? Well, that's not the guy that robbed the bank. So if we're dealing with these historical sources and it says that Joan of Arc was a black woman with darkly brown skin, a darkly brown face, and then they show you an image of this pale white woman, what conclusion do you come to? Well, that's not the same woman. You can attach a name to anything. I can show you a picture of anyone and attach a name that's not that person's name, because the face that they show is not the face that these actual historical figures had. Because we've gone over 2 sources now that say that Joan of Arc was a black woman with a darkly brown, swarthy complexion, with darkly brown, swarthy skin. And then they show you this white woman. I go back to the analogy. If the wanted poster and the person in the back of the police car don't match, what conclusion do you come to? Well, that must not be the person. If the sources and the picture they show you don't match, what conclusion do you come to? Well, that must not be an historically accurate depiction of Joan of Arc, and it's not. So I'll read this again before we move on. She appeared to be about 25 years of age, was strong and of a brown complexion. What does swarthy mean? To be darkly brown. Joan of Arc is a darkly brown, swarthy black woman. And these pictures that they show that's supposed to be depicting her are solely fiction. There is not a speck or a morsel of truth or reality in them. There is nothing more than white fantasies, because these people have no history, so they fabricate history. And us as black people who they say have no history, it's ironic because Caucasians didn't steal Latinos' history. They didn't steal Asians' history. They didn't steal Arabs' history. They stole black people's history. So who does that tell you has the most history? They're not pretending to be Asians. They're not pretending to be Arabs. They're not pretending to be Latinos. They took our history, which in turn tells you we must have the most interesting history, because that's the history they decided to appropriate. Now here we're in this last book, and we're going to go over the description of Joan of Arc's 2 brothers. She had 2 brothers, one older and one younger. Her full brothers, they have the same mother and the same father. And we're going to see how they were described, because if someone describes your siblings with whom you share both parents, they're really describing you at the same time. So let's see how her brothers were described. We're in this book called Joan of Arc, the Maid of Orléans by Thomas James Serrell. This one was released in 1841, and we're going to read pages 164 and 165. Here we're on page 164, and let's see how Joan of Arc's younger brother was described. Watching the operation of his broad hand, and satisfied almost as he himself was with the completion he was approaching, stood little Pierre. Now Pierre is Joan of Arc's younger brother. Stood little Pierre, as he was called, a boy of 11, dark-eyed and with raven hair, with a clear brown oval face, marked as a blood horse in his features. Now, let me go over that again. This is Joan of Arc's younger brother. He is dark-eyed. His eyes aren't blue or green. With raven hair. What color is a raven? Ravens are black. So he's dark-eyed, with black hair, with a clear brown oval face. Brown, brown, brown. Now, if you put a white person and a black person next to each other, and you can't tell me which one is brown, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, this stuff is common sense. He has a clear brown oval face. This is basic color theory. Brown. Put a white person and a black person next to each other. Which one has the brown skin? Which one's skin is brown? Because in no universe is a Caucasian called brown or swarthy or black. This is the 11-year-old younger brother of Joan of Arc with a clear brown oval face, dark eyes and black hair. And it says that he is marked as a blood horse in his features. Now, let me show you what a blood horse is. If someone described as having the complexion of a blood horse, let me show you what color a blood horse is, because this is a very old English term. This is the color of a blood horse. As you can see at the top of the screen, blood horse. Look at the color of this horse. Is that the color of a Caucasian? Is that the color of a white person? Look at the color of this blood horse. This almost 200-year-old book said that Joan of Arc's younger brother had a brown oval face and was marked as a blood horse in his features. Look at the color of this horse. You see the color of the coat of this horse is a blood horse. This is the color of skin Joan of Arc's younger brother was described as having. He was marked as a blood horse in his features. He was brown skinned. He had brown skin, a brown face. He was the color of a blood horse. This is Joan of Arc's full younger brother. Now let's move on to page 165 and see how Joan of Arc's older brother was described. In appearance, swarthy, broad-set, hardy, and strong beyond his height. So here we have another description. First, we saw that Joan of Arc's younger brother was described as having dark eyes, black hair, brown skin, a brown face, and being the complexion of a blood horse. Now we have Joan of Arc's older brother, who in appearance is swarthy, broad-set, hardy, and strong beyond his height. He's dark of complexion. He's darkly brown. He's brown of complexion. He's black. He's black of complexion. Remember what swarthy means. So now we have Joan of Arc's younger and older brother, with whom she shares both parents, being described as black. So how does this white girl have two black brothers? They all have the same parents. How does this white girl have two black brothers? Her older brother's black. Her younger brother's black. And she in the middle is somehow white. We have to start practicing common sense. Joan of Arc was a black woman. Her older brother was a black man. Her younger brother was a black boy. Her mother was a black woman. Her father was a black man. So now we not only have primary sources describing Joan of Arc as being a black, darkly brown woman, we have sources describing her family as also being black. So I ask again, how does a white girl have two black brothers? Both her brothers are described as black. So how is she white? So not only do you have historical sources describing her herself as black, scholars and historians in the past went so far as to describe her family and her brothers also as being black, to really drive home the point. So when you look at these fake white images of Joan of Arc, would you believe that image to be truthful if you knew that both her brothers were described as black? So now I've gone over several historical pieces of evidence, several pieces of historical proof to prove that Joan of Arc was not the white woman that these false paintings portray her to be. Those paintings are nothing but fantasy. Joan of Arc was described as a swarthy, darkly brown black woman, and her two brothers were described as being black. It's time for black people to start reading for ourselves, educating ourselves, and coming out of the spell that these white lies have had our people under for decades. We must start searching things out, demanding proof, demanding evidence, and stop blindly believing that every person that was a slave was black and every person that wasn't was white. And let me say one more thing. Don't let these Caucasians throw that blackwashing word around. It's not blackwashing when you have actual historical evidence and proof to prove that the people you're talking about were black. It would be blackwashing if we do what they do and just say things without proof or evidence, claiming that everybody was black in the way that they claim that everybody was white without an ounce of proof or evidence. So don't let them use that blackwashing word to try to guilt trip you or make you think that you're crazy. When you come with facts and evidence, it's called historical proof. It's called a historical fact, not blackwashing. And according to actual history, if we started blackwashing things, that would be way closer to the truth than the whitewashing that is not evidence or fact-based at all, that they've been doing for decades. So I hope that this video has not only been educational, but empowering. The so-called African-American, or as I like to say, the not-so-African African-American, we have the richest history of any group of people on this earth. And that is why our history is the history that the Caucasians chose to steal and appropriate. Joan of Arc, the infamous Saint Joan of Arc of France, was a black woman. That is a historically documented, easily provable fact. It's time for us to get reading and take back what has been taken from us, which is our rich history as the so-called or not-so-African African-American. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, and I'll catch you in the next one.